Well, it's one of those seasons that you you don't ever want to stop talking about, really, just from the basis of how our team performed throughout the year. And more importantly, the chemistry of this basketball team was special. It was a special team to coach, and one that I really enjoyed every day. I enjoyed coaching them on the practice court, and I really enjoyed the journey that we took this year. I think it's exciting to look forward to what the future holds for Texas, but again, it's nice to take a step back now that season is over and really appreciate how hard everyone in the program worked to have the kind of season that we had.
Question? After a couple of weeks after the season, it's always a different time for reflection. Does anything else stand out in your mind after you've had a few more weeks to digest the successful year?
I think the interesting thing as a coach is, and probably the reflection time comes a little bit more for the coaches than it does the players, because the players immediately go into academic mode heavily because finals are coming up at the beginning of May, and they've probably had some things that they put on a back burner during the playoffs. So they go into full academic mode while we have a chance to maybe take a breath. And one of those breaths for me is that we always, as a coaching staff and as a coaching community, you go attend the Final Four because it's part of our convention. So it's always interesting to hear people and their take on maybe your team or the year that you had. And I think what was interesting for me and made me really proud was how many people, from a peer perspective across the country, really appreciated the way this basketball team played the game. And it was really quite amazing for me how many people said, you've very, very easily could have been a Final Four team. And I think we knew that. I think we knew that we were really that talented this year and had that kind of chemistry. But when you hear it from your peers, it's a nice thing. It's nice to know that you were recognized across the country.
Do they kind of believe that your peers telling you that they kind of think this program is headed for bigger things than even Elite Eight Final Fours?
Well, I think so. I think we all know that we're in a position where we can consistently be a contender, and I think that you look at this year, and there were a couple of Final Four teams that didn't have as many wins as we did. And they got on a roll at the right time, and I think that's what position we want to put ourselves in every year. You want to win, hopefully, enough games that you have a chance to host. I think as long as the rules are what they are and the format is what it is, I don't want to say it's an advantage because people lost this year on their home court. There were significant upsets in our game on the home court, but I do think at Texas it is a comfort to be in the confines of the Erwin Center and be with our fans. So I think just hoping that you get to that level where you have a chance to go through that process of hosting and putting yourself in a position where you are able to play in a position to go to a Final Four, which is what we did. And then it kind of begins to be the matchups. And that's what really, I think, being a Final Four contender, typically, even in the men's game, boils down to matchups. But you want to put yourself in a position where your matchups are usually advantageous for you.
You mentioned that home court. Women's college basketball kind of used to be chalk in the NCAA tournament for the most part.
Right.
What are the upsets and those kind of teams getting to the Final Four? What does that say for the way this game's grown?
I think it's grown enormously. And one example I would mention, and I actually mentioned it to our staff, was in the preparation for our second game here in the Erwin Center. It worried me. I mean, I was concerned about our matchup with Missouri. It was a tough matchup, and then when you look across the country, though there were a lot of upsets in the women's game, and there was a time when that was a given. The first two rounds for the top 16 teams, or the top 20, whatever, those were pretty much, those guys were going to the Sweet 16. That's just kind of the way it was. And I didn't feel comfortable at all playing Missouri. We played terrific, and I was thrilled with the way that we approached that game. But again, it didn't feel easy to me at all.
With the WNBA draft coming up, what's Amani's kind of mentality? I'm sure you've talked about this a bit about everything. What is her new attitude now going forward with the new opportunity?
I think Imani has to be absolutely thrilled. For her to have battled all of the injuries that she battled throughout her career and have a chance to have a special senior season like she did. And then I think, if I'm correct about this, I think she's the first player from Texas to be invited to the draft that's been televised. Obviously, we've had some players drafted, but I do think that since they started televising the first round of the draft, she is our first player to be among those top 12 that they invite to the draft in the women's game. So what an accomplishment and what a thrill for her. She's there right now. She's been there since yesterday. And those 3 days prior to the draft are enlightening for the women's players because there's a lot of teaching and a lot of learning about what it takes to be a professional. And those are terrific things, not only for Imani, but for our basketball program, because now she can come home and kind of feel the fire of some of our young ones. That's kind of how I think things get started in a really grand fashion.
What does losing Travis mean to the program? How big is it for you? Obviously,
Yeah.
it's a great opportunity for him, but what does it
Yeah.
mean for you guys?
Well, I think the good thing about having staff members move on is it's a testament to the way we do things here. I think it's a testament not only for the university, but our program and where our program is at right now, that the last 2 years I've lost a coach to a head coaching position. So there's good and bad to that. First of all, I haven't taken a breath yet, and I want to shoot both of them because of it. But I'm happy for them, and that's what we're supposed to be doing as head coaches. We're supposed to be putting guys in a position that if this is what their goal is, then you help them accomplish that, and you give them a platform and you teach them. And I feel like that I do that. I feel like that the first thing I do is teach them how I want things done, but then I also give them a platform if they want to put themselves out there and give themselves an opportunity to enhance themselves, in their profession, then they can do that. And I think that that's pretty evident that that's what we're doing here at Texas. So it's an interesting position because a lot of people would like to have that position, but there's not a whole lot of people that can replace Travis. That I don't even know that I need to try to do that. I think I need to try to find the best person for the job. But again, he had a combination of a lot of special qualities, and most of them had to do with the fact that he was a Longhorn, and he understood what Texas was all about.
Karen, losing Travis and losing a non-senior like Haddis, does it make your offseason even tougher? Because you said you haven't taken a breath yet. So is it tougher than you expected because of stuff like that?
It happens. It happens. You hope you don't lose a coach a year, and that's the tough part about it, is that at the time that you hope that you can just keep this thing calm, there always seems to be something in our game that sort of throws you off and throws you a curve that you have to deal with. I'm really, really bittersweet about Sarah because I have a lot of appreciation for her attitude and the effort that she brought forth every day in practice. But sometimes you just understand that she's graduating with a Texas degree, and it gives her that extra year of eligibility for her, gives her an opportunity to go somewhere and see a different world and go to graduate school somewhere else and make some different connections in another part of the country. So in the same breath that I'm disappointed she's leaving, I also understand that she's taken advantage of a special opportunity to play a fifth year at another school. And maybe somewhere where she feels like they really need someone at that position. We were a little bit of a numbers game. I do think that her effort and her attitude would have carried forward positively with one more year here, but on the same breath, I get it. I mean, she has a chance to go to graduate school somewhere else, so it makes sense to me.
So because of that, do you look forward to an off-season where no coach leaves and no undergraduate leaves?
I mean, yes and no. My job is to help guys get where they want to be, and part of that is that coaches move on. And as hard as it is to sort of start over and know that you have to, one more time, you've got to mentor someone to, to learn the system. I'm proud. I mean, I'm proud that they have an opportunity to move on. So it's just part of it.
What type of development do you hope to see from Tasia and Ariel this offseason?
Well, I think it's going to be a tremendous amount of development because most often after their freshman year is when they can sort of figure out what their weaknesses and strengths are, and they go to work. They go to work on them. And the way they get them figured out is through playing time. So Tasia and Ariel enter a little bit different place because Ariel last year played enough as a freshman that she could visibly see what she needed to work on. But then she had the surgery. So she wasn't able to work on her weaknesses as much as she would have had she not had the surgery and been out, for X amount of months. So for her, I think she's now really understands, I'm going to get to work on the things that are going to get me to the next spot. For Tasia, it was a little bit of a delayed reaction with working on your weaknesses because she just this year got enough playing time that she could see, okay, these are the things I didn't really work on, I didn't know, maybe didn't recognize the importance of what the coaches were saying or what I knew I needed to do. So I think now she got enough playing time that she recognizes it too. So they're almost in the same boat because of Ariel's injury. I expect them both to be, as I do everyone, to be better players next year. And for those two, because they'll be juniors, they'll have a much more mature personality. The leadership I think will be real obvious from our juniors next year.
In the tournament, Sean was on the podium a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
For her, throughout the year, it's kind of up and down.
Yeah.
Has she figured something out in those final few games that really can make a difference for this team?
I think so. I definitely think that span of time in conference play towards the end of it, that I would probably say the last 6 games of conference play, they say all the time that the bench connects right to the head. And I think that the time that she got to sit there and realize that, there's a process to this and there are things that you have to do at in a high-level sport that involve execution, I think she learned some things just sitting there. And then she began to work on those things in practice, and then all of a sudden you could kind of see that light coming on in the Big 12 tournament. It's funny because I said to the coaches, I think it's finally flickering. And then obviously it carried over in the NCAA tournament. But I think there always comes a time for a freshman that, and sometimes it's like right immediate, and then they hit the freshman wall later on. Because the immediate is usually they're just playing without fear, and they don't know any better, and then all of a sudden they get exposed, and then they go backwards. For her, I think that part of the second half of conference play when everybody knows your tendencies and they know exactly what you're going to do, you either fix some things or you just kind of drown a little bit and you figure it out in the off season. She's going to be leaps and bounds better next year than she is right now.
What will the next 6 months look like for the Veronica sisters? Can you talk about both yet, or just one?
Absolutely, I can talk about both. Well, Audrey, the one that went to junior college, won a national championship and was co-MVP. So I think what I can take from that is that she's a competitor, no matter what environment that you put her in, because that was an unusual circumstance for her to make the decision to go to junior college because we didn't have 2 scholarships, and that's kind of how that came about. They both wanted to transfer, and I didn't have but one, so I guess they flipped a coin, and one of them made the decision to go, and it was Audrey. And so Callie has obviously been in practice with us all year long, and anybody that's come to practice can see that she's going to be a valuable part of our team next year. They're similar but different, even though they're identical. One of them is the one in Audrey, the one that is coming from Florida, is a little bit more of a physical post player, and Callie is a little bit more of a stretch 4 that could actually play the 3 some. They both shoot the 3 very well, which will look dramatically different than any of our forwards since I've been here. We've not had any forwards that consistently shoot outside and are more stretch 4s, and that you're going to see that a lot of that with the addition of Joyner Holmes also.
Coach, obviously Gino, whole UConn scenario kind of blew up around the Final Four time. What was your take on whether or not them winning was much as good for college basketball? And I would assume as a coach you just want the challenge to beat them
Yeah.
and to get better as a program. But what was your take of everything that was said about it's not good for the game or it is good
Yeah.
for, for the future?
My take is simply that he, at some point or another, he won with when there was parity, and then all of a sudden he wins a couple of championships. And once you do that, then it's how do you take advantage of that in the realm of recruiting? And I think he did a masterful job of that. And for a long stretch, he most clearly had the best players in the country. So I don't want to take anything away from him as a coach, but he very clearly has had the most dominant players, other than you could argue with the stretch that Brittany Griner was in. But I don't have a problem with it. I mean, we have to get better, and that's just all there is to it. If you want to beat somebody like that, then you have to figure out a way to outwork them. I thought we closed the gap very clearly from the year before, and the most significant difference in the way we played them was just simply that we didn't look like we were afraid of them, and the mentality of our team was completely different than it was the year before. But with all that said, they still put players on the floor that are more skilled and are developed in a way that we need to strive for. So, as much as you hate and you get sick of hearing about it, then the only way you're going to stop hearing about it is to beat them. And so that's going to take some work on everybody else's part.
Anything else?
Who do you expect to contend for the point guard position? Because you're losing Selena and Empress Locke. Spent a lot of time playing the one.
The last couple of years, Empress hasn't played the one very, very much at all, just because of the emergence of Brooke McCarty. I think Brooke has been tutored properly. That's the great thing about once you start getting the ball rolling and recruiting, then I kind of have a philosophy of trying to keep my point guards 2 years apart so that they can kind of be groomed by the older player, but then they have 2 years of it being sort of their team. And that's where we finally got into. We have, obviously, Brooke will play the point a lot. I think LaShawn, as the years goes, as she gets a little older and wiser, I think she most definitely can play it some. But I think also Alicia Sutton, who will be an incoming freshman, I think is the best point guard in the country out of that class. I mean, I'm sure some will argue with me that there's a few others, but based on what I watched in the summertime, I think if she's not the best one, then she's probably the second or third best one. And she will come in here with the privilege of having Brooke work with her. So I think that's the perfect scenario for us. Her name is Shug. Everybody calls her Shug. So it's hard for me to even say Alicia because I call her Shug. But she's one of those, she'll remind y'all a little bit of TJ Ford. She's got wheels that turn really fast, but she's smooth, changes gears really well. She's got a nice jump shot, so they're going to be a nice complement for each other.